And welcome everybody to the final show of season 3 of the Planet Mullins podcast. And I'm so super stoked to have a longtime friend who I haven't spoken to in quite a while, who's he left LA about 12 years ago, and he's well known for a lot of things, including being Kenny G's original bass player. And he's done a lot of amazing stuff over a 40-year period as a bass player, producer, composer, and all-around good guy. And he's looking more and more like Anderson Cooper as he gets older, which is say hello to Vail Johnson, everybody. Hey, Vail.
Hello. I should send you that picture of me and Rahm Emanuel. We look like we're on a date. Because he's kind of little, and I arm around him. It's like we snuggled up, head to head. It's like so going with the Anderson Cooper theme. I mean, it could totally work.
So great, man. Well, you've been doing so much stuff. I was reading your bio and stuff and the show notes before getting started, and first off, I didn't realize that you had 6 older brothers. That's crazy.
Yeah, indeed. All musicians, and as was our mom and her whole side of the family.
Oh, wow.
So we found out just when my mom passed, going through all of her stuff, we found out so much more that she never told us. We found out that our great grandmother actually sang in the Metropolitan Opera. We have a
wow.
And in the late 1800s, we have a fan from the performance of the Mikado that she was in, and a Japanese fan signed by all the cast.
Wow.
This thing is like 130 years old, all falling apart, but it's like, wow, we come. And then on her other side, the grandfather's side, there were like carnival people, it was like, we got these pictures of carnival guys, with banjos and weird instruments, and some of the people looking kind of like the Deliverance Kid,
Well, that actually would explain a lot about you.
It does. I mean, another thing. Well, on that same theme, probably a lot that explains about me is, by the time I came along, the 7th boy,
seventh son.
Yeah, there were literally no parental supervision or guidance whatsoever. Because by the time I came around, it was like, we got so many of these things. If we lose one or two, so it's okay. We still got more than we ever wanted,
Right.
So I had there were no boundaries. There was no limit of anything. And so for better or for worse.
It's an exhaustion thing, man, because I was the youngest of 3. And I can't imagine being the youngest of 7 brothers, because the parents get so tired.
Yeah.
That they're just like, oh my God, we just don't have the energy to deal with this stuff. So you're basically like running amok and being insane. And then how did you end up picking up a bass?
Man, well, because there was music in the house at all times. Our mom was a church organist, and everybody was playing. And all in different disciplines. I had, one of my brothers, Ron, played in the Seattle Symphony for 45 years.
Wow.
Before he passed, and played percussion. He was principal percussionist,
Okay.
And so we had all different kinds of things. And so growing up, it was never really a question of, are you going to be a musician? It was just like, what instrument are you going to play? That was just the feeling, It's like, It was just normal. It's like, it's normal to eat lunch. It's normal to play music. And that was, and that was it. And so I picked up the trumpet because that looked kind of fun, and played in 4th grade. Okay. And in Seattle, they had really great music departments in schools. So even in our grade school, in 4th grade, we had a concert band and an orchestra. It's like 60 piece, each of them.
Wow.
In freaking grade school.
Wow.
And so I was in the band, and I started playing trumpet, and played that up through my sophomore year in high school, in the school bands.
Right.
But picked up the bass because, when I heard the Beatles' Rubber Soul.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And I heard the bass, and the bass for some reason jumped out at me like it was 10 times louder than everything else in my head. It's like the bass got it. So I got to learn how to do that. I just
Right.
got to that. And, my dad was, super supportive of us, which whatever we wanted, a musical instrument, he's like, sure. Okay, let's do that, and got me an amp and a bass and just started going crazy on it. So I just couldn't stop listening to music and trying to figure out what the bass was doing. Just anything I could.
You were kind of, well, first off, that would explain why you're always 10 times louder than everyone else in the band. Because
that's just normal.
That's just,
it's supposed to be that loud.
That's how loud it's. I remember doing a couple of gigs with you where you came out and you had been playing with Kenny G for a while, but it was like when you would come out on stage, even in a small club, it was still like you had this presence of kind of like Joe Rogan and The Rock and the feeling of Wembley Arena. Like you just kind of came out, even if there was nobody else on stage during sound check, you would step onto the stage and be like, oh my God, we're gonna rumble, this is gonna be amazing, holy crap. And so I've always described you as an arena bass player. The people that ask me, what was it like to play with Vail Johnson? But out of all the gigs you've done, and I know by now you've done like tens of thousands of them, what would be maybe your favorite gig that you remember? I mean, something that you did in the past on your own band, or because I know you're doing your own solo shows now, but
yeah.
But for example, what was the best of all the gigs you did with Kenny?
Well, I got it. That's an easy one. It's like the first show that I did with him. Well, the first big concert when I met Kenny, the whole band's from Seattle, so I met him there. He came and saw me play in a club, asked me to join up. So this is 1986.
Okay.
And so we were doing a few club dates, literally renting a Ford Econoline van. Kenny's driving, all the gear in the back, and we're, driving to Portland or whatever, and doing a few little gigs. And in June of that year, so he was starting to get a little bit of airplay. So he gets a gig at the Playboy Jazz Festival at Hollywood Bowl, 1986. And I remember doing that show, and in my solo, I was playing this old Kramer fretless, but I was slapping on it, like a maniac, because nobody told me I couldn't, so I just always did on the fretless. And I know you've played, and I'm sure you've played that. Back in the day, Bill Cosby would sit in a chair, just off stage right, the MC for people that don't know, and he'd sit there and he'd kind of watch the band, or if he wasn't interested, he'd just kind of do something else. So
he always had the cigar burning, man.
Yeah, he's just sitting there chilling. And I remember when we do that show, and I think it was Steps Ahead was before us, and I think Miles was coming after us. Okay. This is the big time now. Right. I was just blown away by this. So Steps Ahead or Schofield is done, and they're still playing, and the stage starts to revolve. People that haven't seen it, the stage is revolving, they're playing, and we're starting.
Right.
And so we're turning around, and the stage is coming around, and there's 18,000 people up there like that.
Right.
And I was like, I was just blown away by the experience. It was so much fun. And I knew that it was going to go by. It was going to seem like it was 2 minutes long. I just knew that. So come time for my solo, I'm out there. I decide I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to moonwalk. And so I'm out there in the crowd. I'm slapping like this, and I start moonwalking like this, crossing the crowds, like that. And I look over, and Cosby is on the floor laughing, literally on the ground, cracking up. He had dumped himself out of the chair, and he's dying laughing. And that was the greatest moment of my music career. I knocked Cosby out of his chair.
Wow, man. Well, it's so fun having you on the show, because then other times when we've hung out and done stuff, there's always been the pressure of a gig and start time and no rehearsals, and when are we where are we going to park, how do we load in, how do we get to the place, this and that and the other thing. But I remember the exact stuff that you're talking about, because I did that festival with Diane Shore, and it was Dave Brubeck was on the other side of the stage, because people that don't know about the Playboy Jazz Festival, by the way, it's no longer allowed to be called that now.
Wow.
Now it's called the Hollywood Bowl Jazz Festival. They took Playboy off.
Wow.
That's part of the whole woke current culture. It's no more Playboys apparently, but
Yeah.
there's a stage on the front of this thing and there's a stage on the back. So you've got a band in the back setting up, which is kind of a genius idea because there's no downtime between the sets. You know, so we're on the front with Diane Shure and we're playing out there. I did it in, I guess it was 93 with her. And then the stage starts to tilt and they tell you to keep playing because, you know, you're not going to stop the end of the song because what'll happen is that the other band will come around. So I didn't know who the other band was going to be. It ended up being freaking Dave Brubeck.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you know, I went backstage, like you said, Cosby's back there in his room with his cigar and stuff. And, you know, he looked at me and he said, "Well, you're coming along." And I was like, "Oh, thanks. Coming along. I'm already Grammy nominated. I've already done like 10 records. I'm coming along. Thanks."
Yeah, right, you know. Stick with it, kid. You know,
stick with it, kid. Well, so these moments, I mean, I know there's been so many of them for you, but Keb Mo came to mind not only because I was planning on getting with you, but a couple of weeks ago I was working at Musicians Institute in Hollywood. So I hadn't been there in forever, and I don't know have you ever been in that building at MI in Hollywood?
I did. Yeah, I did a couple of masterclass things there.
Yeah, so I was doing something similar, and they have like the most famous people to ever come out of that school. There's kind of like a, you know, photo gallery in the hallways there where it's like you got Herbie and you have this person and that person, and Keb Mo, there was a picture of him and it made me think of you because you were his bass player, or maybe still are. How did you end up getting that gig? That must have been incredible.
Oh man, that's a ton of fun working with him. I'll tell you, the connection was Terry Woolman, and I'm sure you know Terry Woolman.
Oh yeah, right,
the guitar player in LA.
Yeah,
he had worked with him before too. So I never met Keb. You know, his name's Kevin. I never met Kevin in LA, but I'm moving to Nashville, and Terry calls me and says, "You know what? My good friend Kevin Moore is moving to Nashville as well, the area." We both moved to Franklin, actually. I mean, he might have been here a month before me, right? So he says, "Yeah, I want to connect you guys." And I said, "Sure." So I get a call. I've been in my house like 2 days, no furniture yet because I moved the day before the big flood in 2010.
Oh, right.
So the freeways were jammed. I had no deliveries of anything. I was sitting in a completely bare house, right? And I get a call, and the guy says, "Hey, man, it's Keb Mo." And I go, "Oh, cool. Yeah, Terry said you're going to call." He goes, "What are you doing?" And I go, "I'm just kind of sitting in my house doing nothing." And he goes, "Okay, yeah, we'll be right over." What's your address? I'm like, "Okay, cool." It wasn't like, "Hey, man, what can I come?" He's just like, "We'll be over." And so he just shows up with his wife Robbie and his little son Carter, who was like 4 at the time, and so we met and we hit it off right away. So he brought me in on a couple of records, and I played on like a Taj Mahal thing and a couple other of his records, and at that point Kenny wasn't touring a lot, and I kept telling him, I said, "Man, next time you're putting a full band together, let me know." And so this was, I think, 2011, 12, and 13. I was doing pretty much all of his touring, and then the small amount Kenny was doing, it kind of fit right in the pocket. So I was just going back and forth with the two of them. It was something that hardly ever happens, But and then in 2013, Kenny started working a lot again, and so I kind of had to let that gig go. Keb's gig. But no, it was really fun. He was really inspiring too in a lot of ways. We had a ball. I was really into his version, growing up in Watts version of Delta blues.
Uh-huh.
He's from South Central, but,
Uh,
but people think he is like this Delta blues guy from the South, so he's got a different take on it because he has, funk and R&B roots, and then he got into the blues thing later. So I
right.
kind of picked that up and did a bunch of that stuff on bass. It was really fun to figure it out. So I'm going, man, how does, just, the thumb and two finger thing. I'm going, man, you know what? I think I could do that on bass. So
Uh-huh.
I picked up a lot of stuff from Kevin. Plus, he's absolutely insane, and it's great. He's older than us. He's like, I don't know, 8 years older, 8 years
Okay.
older than us.
Yeah.
But man, he's really funny, and just a really great guy to be around. Really fun.
Wow, man. Well, I subbed for Jeff Paris on Saturday night.
Okay,
And
Jeff Paris is totally out of his mind.
Jeff's out of
I
his
love that
mind.
guy.
And I hadn't talked to Jeff since I don't know, it'd been like 20 years or longer. And I got this call from Rick Whitfield, and I guess Jeff does his gig.
Mhm.
And Rick said, "Oh yeah, well, I think I'll have somebody send you the charts." And it ended up being Jeff Paris emailed me the whole book for this gig I was going to sub on. And I was like, "Wow, man, what are you up to?" And he said, "Well, I did 12 years with KebMo."
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, Vail probably has a few Jeff Paris stories, maybe one or two.
Oh, man. Yeah. There's a few. I'm bound by the limits of good taste and decorum, really, to share much of that.
What
But on my
happened?
deathbed, all you guys are going down. No, I'm not going down without letting it all out. It's all coming out.
Yeah, what happens on tour stays on tour in a lot of cases, right?
Well, my view of it is, what happens on tour just never happened.
Well, there you go.
You clear the RAM in your head after the tour. It just disappears.
Yeah, I call it the Men in Black factor. Like, there's a lot of times I think back to the 80s, and I wish I just had that little black thing, and you just go, okay, boop, okay, you have no recollection of this. And the sad part is, in some cases, I have no recollection.
Right.
I don't have to be Men in Black because I just don't remember, because I've just done too much stuff. But you and I were on one of those van tours, and I want to come back to the kennyg thing about him driving the Ford Econoline van.
Yeah.
We were on a trip, and we were leaving. We were playing with Eric Marienthal, and it was like a 3 or 4 city gig way back in the day. And you were not happy with Eric's choice of drummers. You were like totally not digging this guy. And I'm not going to say his name, but we'd finished up. We played in Philly or somewhere like that, and we're driving along, and Eric is driving, and we're all talking and this and that. And there's this huge boulder in the middle of the road coming up. And it's not like a little rock; it's like a freaking house. This thing is so big, and you're like, Eric, look out! Eric, look out! And like, dude, go around it. And Eric's just like, blam.
Yeah. We took out the oil pan.
We roll over this thing, takes out the oil pan. The car almost overturns. The dashboard goes crazy, and we're looking for an exit, and the oil is just running out of this freaking rental. And we get off we have an exit ramp. We get off, we park it. The parking lot starts to flood with oil.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, because we're supposed to be in Schenectady, New York, upstate, that night.
Right.
And if you remember, I went into the 7-Eleven there and just talked to a lady who was buying a candy bar for her kid. And
I didn't know that you were. I didn't know you were the front man on that exercise. I just remember her giving us a ride, but that's awesome. You started a conversation, huh?
Yeah, we were standing around in there trying to figure it out. Eric was calling the rent-a-car place, and they were saying, "No, we don't have a car for another 200 miles. You're gonna." So I talked this lady into it. All of a sudden, we're putting all of our crap into her car. She's driving us along. It was like a bad Chevy Chase movie, man.
It was totally Chevy Chase. Absolutely, yeah. We're crammed in there. I think the drummer was sitting on my lap too for an hour and a half or whatever. That was this.
Yeah, I think so, man. Yeah. But traveling, it's always a crazy thing. Now, I used to really like traveling a lot more than I do now, because now I'm still playing in Hubert Laws's group. I've been doing that since you and I last talked. Actually, I've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
And he's not doing much. Like, we don't go out very much, but when we do, it's usually somewhere nutty like Russia or India.
Right. Yeah.
Or something like that. Did you guys ever play in India?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about trips to India and stuff, because that's a long ass trip to get over there.
Yeah. Well, it's not as bad as a lot of them. It's going down to the South Pacific, like Singapore, Indonesia, and of course going to New Zealand and Australia. That's really that's a long ass ways, man. It's literally half the way around. You go any farther and you're getting closer to home. That kind of those places. But well, here's a funny story about the India, the last India thing that we did. So we're doing. So we're going to play in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
And Thailand and India on this one particular run. Like 3 or 4 cities in Thailand, 1 gig in Sri Lanka, and 2 cities, Mumbai and Bangalore in India.
Oh yeah, Bangalore, yeah.
And so the airline loses my bass. I have it in an anvil case. They lose my bass.
Oh shit.
And I end up having to rent a bass in each place that we go to. And so you can imagine the kind of rental bases you get in Sri Lanka. It was not even a Taiwanese copy of a jazz bass. I don't know what it was. With like, it had 4 strings, but they're all like different brands. You could tell a different wrap, and there were no new strings in the country. And so that's one of the things about travel that gets less and less fun is your ability to deal with all of these new variables that come up. You just start to get weary of it. It's like, oh, really? I got to play another. And so that whole run, and I'm calling the airline, and I get it was this Qatar Airways that we flew over there.
I know about them, yeah.
And I call them up every day, and the same lady goes. And I say, how can you guys lose my bass? She goes, no, your bass is not lost. It is misplaced. Okay. Can you replace it? Can you find it? I says, yes, we're doing everything we can. But don't worry, it is not lost. It is just misplaced. It's like, wow, that really helps a lot. And the thing is,
go up?
It did. It never left Chicago. It was in the Chicago airport baggage place the entire trip. It just stayed right there in the corner.
Oh my God.
They couldn't find it.
It
stayed there the whole time.
We were in Moscow with Hubert Laws, and that's not as far as Australia or India, but to save $100, his manager would not put us on the flight directly from LA, which only takes like 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to fly from LA to LaGuardia.
Yeah.
And then we'd sit in LaGuardia for 6 hours.
Right.
So we're already at 11 and a half hours. And then we get on the plane, and then we're going to fly 12 and a half more hours. So it's like, 24 hours.
Sure. Yeah.
Hubert's gig is really challenging because I'm the orchestra of all that early CTI stuff. Like, I got to play bassoon, and I have to play a lot of guitar parts, and I do the brass section and vibraphone. All these things. So it's a very specific contract writer of, here's the gear I need. I need this, this, this. So they had been telling me kind of the similar thing the whole time over email. Oh yeah, got you covered. Oh yeah, I got you covered. And these are specialty items like a Roland XP80 that's been out of production forever. So I get all the way over there. I look at the equipment sitting next to the stage. It's 2 Yamaha motifs. That's it.
Perfect.
And I don't know how to I don't even know how to get a Fender Rhodes sound out of a Motown. But we have about 15 minutes to get ready.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're lucky it wasn't just a DX7 and a clavinet.
Well, I mean, I want to go back to the Kenny thing because there's obviously, Keb Mo, that's kind of his thing is something that's not that controversial because I didn't know he was from Compton until you just told me just now, but
yeah,
the Kenny G thing is swirled around so much controversy
yeah,
in the business that it's kind of become a parody of itself in certain ways. And since you
right.
were there from the very beginning, that's one thing I thought might be really interesting for the people that watch my show is to get your take on how that whole career arc of all the stuff that happened, because you guys were basically a bar band in Seattle at first, right?
Yeah, yep.
And
Yeah, well, see, when I got with Kenny, he had already recorded his fourth record for
okay,
Arista, Duotones, the one with Songbird on it.
Songbird, yeah.
And oddly enough, that record he recorded all by himself with Lindrum, some sort of probably DX7s and
Right.
on an Otari 8-track reel to reel.
Wow.
That whole record
At his house?
Yep, yep.
Wow.
All
So
synth-based.
that was
He played
already
the keys.
after Lorber had done. He did one record with Jeff Lorber Fusion where he played tenor and he was amazing.
Yeah.
And then, why do you know why he switched over that whiny soprano thing from that great tenor playing? I mean,
Oh, sure. Well, when I started with him, I think he might have played 2 songs on soprano.
okay.
And and it was all R&B, it's all R&B instrumental stuff.
Okay.
Like funky R&B groove stuff, and we always had we had a black guy singing. There's always like a couple of vocal tunes.
Uh-huh.
At that point, his best known songs were the vocal tunes.
It was Lenny Williams, right?
Yeah, he sang on a record. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And so it was predominantly a black audience, and people would go places, and we'd come out and play, and people would go, you can just see the confusion in their head because this is before VH1. They're thinking, I thought Kenny was a black singer. Who's this skinny, long-haired kid playing the saxophone?
Oh, right.
And it was really funny, But yeah, so we're doing those tunes, and he's playing mostly alto.
Oh, okay.
Which he doesn't play at all in the show anymore.
Right.
But there's a great alto player. He'd play maybe 4 songs on tenor and maybe 2 on soprano.
Okay.
And it all came about because of Songbird. Songbird is the thing that hit. Clive Davis got behind it. He got us on the Tonight Show. We played the Tonight Show, and it went insane from there. As soon as he played Songbird, people loved it. And he just said, "That's the direction I'm going. That's awesome." So he went that way, and it took us 30 years to get him to play the tenor again. And so now we've nagged him so much over so long. We're actually playing a freaking Coltrane song in the set.
Wow.
And he absolutely kills it. We play Naima.
Oh yeah.
And he just plays it straight up, and it's tenor playing. I mean, everybody agrees his tenor is his best instrument.
Right.
He plays tenor beautifully, and he played
tenor
a fantastic tone. And we play Naima, and he just plays it straight. There's no noodling, and it's beautiful. It's fantastic. We love that. And we're doing Stan Getz too. We're doing Desafinado in the set.
Oh, nice.
And he plays, and that song is like a 10 or 12-minute jazz exploration because our keyboard player gets to do a thing, and it turns into whatever it is every night. And right. Kenny does a long thing, and it's really fun. It's really fun. We get to stretch out on something that's, is a little more interesting. We can do, and our percussionist Ron Powell, who he's a great Brazilian percussionist. So he plays the pandero and the sordo and all of that, and so we do this really cool bossa thing that is not a corny pretend bossa like a lot of people do. It's like we really get into it. We really dig into the traditional samba and bossa nova style of playing, between drums and percussion and me, and we give this a really cool hump that goes on, and it's a lot of fun. But it's tenor. But yeah, as soon as Songbird hit, that's the answer. He soprano. It's like, this is going to make me $1 billion. Okay, so he just went that way.
Well, I can understand that because
Yeah.
if you're getting that kind of attention from the radio audience and then just people in general, because I don't remember in my lifetime any other act besides Kenny G that could go basically instrumentally around the world and fill arenas and football stadiums.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it was just this phenomenal thing that happened that I don't think it had ever happened before. I mean, in 1959, Dave Brubeck, to his credit, had the biggest and best-selling instrumental song of all time, "Take Five," which was an odd meter tune, and it was number one on pop radio, and 5/4 tune with no vocals.
Yeah.
And then from that time until Kenny, there was Miles was in there, but I don't remember Miles playing the Rose Bowl and having it be sold out or something.
Right. Right. Oh yeah, it was really crazy. And one thing, because you mentioned about the controversy around Kenny, it's funny because that all came from outside. He never really did anything or said anything controversial in my mind, because when people would ask, they say, how do you describe your music? And he would always say, it's R&B instrumental. That's my music. It's R&B instrumental. That's his thing.
Okay.
Because he loved Grover. I mean, he loved Dexter Gordon and Sonny Rollins, but he really wanted to be Grover.
Okay.
And that was his thing. So it was just groove music with just kind of a feel good, cool melody.
Right.
And so he described it as R&B instrumental, which really fits what we were doing.
Right.
At the time, it's R&B instrumental. And this whole bit about, well, that's not real jazz. I tell people, well, that's like telling Mariah Carey, that's not real opera. Like, correct. It's not intended to be opera.
Right.
So it's nonsensical to me for people to say it's not real jazz, because it's not jazz.
Right.
It's R&B, man.
Right.
That's what we do. It's funk and R&B, and there's nothing about it that's jazz, and it never was. And Kenny never said anything about it.
Yeah, you guys never purported to be a jazz group. It just ended up being, I think the craziness of it is that there are never enough memory rungs on the ladder of the human average person to go down enough rungs to think, okay, well, this is a saxophone player, but saxophone players do stuff besides jazz.
Yeah, right.
Who knew?
Right.
Who knew?
I know.
I thought every instrumentalist had to be a jazz player because that's what jazz people do, right?
Right. Exactly.
But you've done, besides doing that gig. Well, before we leave the whole Kenny thing, congratulations on still having that gig, because there are very few players that can do a gig from 1986 to 2022.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
You're still there.
It doesn't make any sense.
You guys don't argue or get crazy or anything. You're just cool.
Not really. Very, very, a very minimal amount of friction in the group, and it's shocking, because I've been in bands where the bands imploded after 3 shows.
Right.
But yeah, with Kenny, and I guess it comes. I mean, he influences everybody because he's pretty cool about. I mean, he told me early on. I remember asking him. I said, what kind of what do you like, from a bass player? What do you want to hear? And he goes, I hire people that do what I like already. So you do what you do, and that's what I like.
Right.
And so when he hires guys, I mean, that's it. I mean, he accepts things that maybe he doesn't really dig if you do a certain thing, but he doesn't nitpick it because on balance, you're there because that's what he likes. He likes how the drummer plays drums. He never tells Ron Powell how to play congas
Uh-huh.
because he likes how he plays the congas. So you do your thing. And even if it's something that's a little outside what he might think is best, he might go, I don't know. Overall, it's like, man, you're here to do what you do, and that's why I hired you.
That's
And
so
he told us that early on, and I said, that's awesome. So we have the freedom to do what we're doing, and if it's something that he doesn't like, I mean, you can tell. He's really transparent. I mean, he'll sit back. I could do a fill, which I usually don't, but I could do a little fill. I get excited in the moment. I do something that's a little different, and he's playing. He's doing this thing, and he'll look back at me like that. He never has to say anything because it's like, gotcha. Okay, not doing that again.
Right.
But it's never, hey man, you're kind of fucking up my thing. What do you? It's never that.
Yeah, that dramatic stuff that goes on between band members can get really annoying and really tiresome, especially when you're on the other side of the planet with 4 or 5 people that are all away from their families. They're all out of their comfort zone. And one of my favorite guys, I don't know if you play with him or not, Land Richards. Do you know?
Yeah, I played with him a bunch.
Yeah.
So
Land
I did a bunch of sessions with him. He's a great player, man.
He's just the most fun on the road of anybody I've ever traveled with. I mean, because in Hubert's band, the drummer before Land was Ralph Penland, and rest in peace, Ralph. But Ralph would sit there silently for the whole 23 hours. You're sitting next to this like big black dude. He says nothing.
All right.
For 23 hours, and you get on the phone. I mean, you get on the plane with Land. And Land's like, okay, you see this phone here? This one's just my music. Okay, you see this phone here? This one's only for my wife and my close friends. You see telephone number 3, it's international because I got to talk to Hiroshima because I'm getting ready to go to Japan.
Okay.
What a blast, man.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the most fun I've ever had traveling around the world has been with Land Richards, but it can also just really suck when especially when it's a passive aggressive kind of situation, where somebody kind of jealous of another person in the band, or the leader won't talk to you, but he'll call the manager, and then the manager is like, okay, we got to have a band meeting down in the lobby of the DoubleTree. Right. And you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, right.
I've already had 2 shots of tequila. Do I need to bring a legal pad to this? It's 3 of them.
Yeah, right. You're going to need to exercise your right to remain silent. That's what you need to do.
Now, I noticed something. We're friends on Facebook, which is one of the reasons, watching you post all this crazy, amazing stuff you're doing, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is to talk about your correct me if I'm wrong, but you have like a one-man show that you're touring on occasion, right? Just you?
Yeah, I do.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, it started, the genesis of that for me was watching Ed Sheeran, not live. I saw him on TV playing Wembley Stadium, like 3 nights, sold out by himself.
Wow.
And that's, I don't know, 100,000 plus a night by himself. He's got a looper and his acoustic, and he's singing, and that's it. And I'm thinking, I want to do that. That looks really cool. So I started figuring out how to do things on bass, and I got my looper, and I'm singing a lot of tunes, because what the show is it's about my 40 years of traveling with all these people. Okay. So I'll tell a story about Herbie Hancock, for example, and then I'll do a tune. I'll play Watermelon Man or something like that, and I've got my loops pre-recorded, so I don't have to bore people with setting them up, because it's kind of laborious. So right. I got one of those cool Boss loopers with the three channels.
Okay.
So I do a little drum thing, a little accompaniment, and maybe a bridge changes on another channel. And I do it on bass, and I play, a melody on bass, and and sometimes I'll play the bass on bass, and a lot of these tunes like I'll say something about Stevie Nicks, and I'll do one of her songs. I'll sing them, So I do a
Oh,
lot of singing in the show,
okay.
And so it's about that, and just doing it solo, just bass and looper and singing, and it's been really really fun. So I'm planning on
Wow.
doing a lot more of that.
That's incredible, man. Well,
Yeah.
I've always been upset with Ed because to me, Ed's not really what I consider a great jazz guitar player.
That is not real classical guitar.
That's not real jazz.
I know. Exactly. I know. It's
Yeah.
like I just got inspired to play something here.
Oh, great, man.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see. There's the old one,
Wow.
1987.
I haven't seen that guy in forever, man.
1987, baby. Now still playing the crap out of this thing. It's all wounded, and Lauren,
Still looks pretty nice, man, for being in the Chicago airport for 10 years of tours. Go ahead.
I beat the hell out of this thing for a long time, So I wanted to do something like I show you about what I was talking about with KebMo.
Yeah.
The sort of finger picking thing. I like. That kind of a thing. It's just kind of fun. I figured out how to do that, and I do a lot of that with this in this solo show.
How did you get to be so funky, man? Because with no band or anything, I'm just like sitting here going, man, that groove is so bitchin'.
I don't know. It's really weird. I've tried to figure it out, and I have no idea why that worked out like that.
Did you and your 6 brothers, like, I know this is a really dorky question, but did you guys ever when you were growing up, would you ever sit down with like a James Brown album and analyze it and go through the elements or any Motown or any of that? It was not really like that, right?
No, with my brothers, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, no. But I did play. My first professional gig was with 2 of my brothers.
Oh.
In a band in Seattle.
Okay.
And, yeah, my brother owned a bar called the Blue Banjo in Seattle, and they played Dixieland music.
Wow, man.
2 of my brothers played. So it was his wife was singing, wearing that sort of flapper.
Yeah. The garters and the whole thing.
Yeah, and they're playing, the straw hat thing, and they're playing. They both played 4-string banjo, the one with the pick, where they do this. It's just like crazy pick work, and so that's what I learned. As soon as I got out of high school, they hired me to come into that, because when you're 18, there you could play in bars if you belonged to the union. So I joined the union at 18, and I could play in these bars with them, and I learned how he's doing the hand signals for the 3 sharps, 2 flats, and just learning all these tunes just on the fly, and
wow,
that was my intro into doing it professionally and be getting actually paid well for it.
That kind of education is something that you really can't get in a school. I mean, they're trying now with all these great schools that are out there and stuff, but when you and I were coming up, good luck, man. There was no Berkeley School of Music, and there was no internet there. I got my first fake book when I was 16 from a guy who told me I could go to jail for ever telling anyone that I got it. Because it was that illegal. And
wow.
It's in a red binder. It's right over there in the bookshelf. And I paid $30 for it. And it was 3 tunes per page.
Right. Wow.
And everything. And, but having such a rich, musical family, I'm kind of jealous because my family is not musical. My mom was, but other than that, it was like, you want to be, no, don't put the bass down, man. Play something more.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm back, and I'd love to hear you play some more. It's been a really long time. Do you want to play something from your show? I mean,
I didn't have anything. I don't have my looper set up, but But how about I mean, that when I was played with Herbie, we did the Headhunters versions of a bunch of stuff. And
Okay.
the Headhunters version of Watermelon Man, right?
Yeah.
That's really funny. Harvey Mason, right? And yeah, was it Paul Jackson playing bass? So I just remember
Sure.
it's kind of like.
Uh-huh. Yeah. All right.
That kind of stuff. So that
Ba, ba, ba. Hey, Vail, can you tilt your camera down a little bit so we can see the bass some?
Sure.
We couldn't see the bass during that.
Peace, man.
Yeah, man. So now this kind of thumb technique and stuff, who was it that started that, or did you just kind of develop your own combination of these fingering techniques? How did that happen?
Yeah, I figured it out myself because back then, you couldn't see anybody play unless you saw them live. But I heard Stanley Clark,
Okay.
and I heard Larry Graham,
Okay.
and I just sat endless hours and hours trying to figure out, on my Epiphone Flying V bass, no doubt, trying to figure out how to make those sounds.
Right.
So I never saw anybody do it. I have no idea how anybody does it, but I just figured out how to make the sounds.
I see.
So it's just I just figured it out myself.
It's kind of it is kind of a larger than life kind of thing that you do, because we're here on the internet on a Zoom call and it already sounds like Wembley.
I'll give you an example of that concept.
The only guy that can just, wherever you go, it's a freaking arena, man.
I got a funny little thing that happened to me, and similar things have happened in other ways. But this one time was great when doing a sound check in some club in LA.
Okay.
And I'm playing, and the sound guy is up on stage, and didn't have my amp on yet. It was just some sound coming from the mains, and he comes up and goes, "Turn it down, man, you're too loud." And I said, I don't even have the amp on. Look at it, the pilot light's not even on. And he looks at me and goes, "Well, you just look too loud." And I thought, perfect. I have no chance. I can't even play without an amp on and not be too loud.
So, I've been on tour with you, and you have a very commanding kind of, physique and physical presence out there too. And some people are really intimidated by that, and other people aren't. Okay, let's do a little more bass, man. Play another groove. Play like a.
It's
Wow, man, that was
free
freaking awesome.
association.
That was so awesome, man. You know,
I don't know what I've been doing.
I remember that tempo drop that you do in the bass solo on the live gig, because you're cooking along at like 135, and then all of a sudden you drop it down into the funk, and it's like, look out. And then all the people, man, especially those women out in the audience, are like, oh, hell no, he didn't just go there, did he?
Right.
Wow,
Yeah.
man. Well, now, before we run out of time here, are you going to be doing the one-man show anywhere on the West Coast coming up where we can hang out? Or are you mostly doing it in the South, or what's the schedule like?
Yeah. I'm doing stuff around here and in Alabama and Georgia, going down to Florida.
Nice.
I've got a couple of cool shows down in Florida and Key West.
Okay.
One of the little theaters there.
Beautiful.
But yeah, I haven't booked anything out. I'd like to do that, but it's just such an undertaking trying to do anything by yourself and to try to figure out that logistic. But I would love to do that somewhere out there. I just have no idea where there is even to play anymore. Or something like that where people listen.
Yeah,
gotta be like a listening room.
It's kind of just impossible here, which is maybe one of the reasons that you left. But it's just my older sister, who was a dancer before she retired. She said, well, if you're going to live in LA, the weather's going to be great, but you got to remember that it is not a music town, even though the Grammys are here and there's all Capitol Records and all. It's not a music town. It's an entertainment city.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's like, if you want to go into acting and you want to do Hollywood and you want to be part of Netflix or something, then maybe this is the place to be. CBS TV is here, NBC, all that stuff, Warner Brothers, Studio Lot. But for musicians, it really sucks.
Yeah.
It still sucked. I mean, it sucked when you and I were both living here, which I guess is part of the reason maybe that you moved away, right?
Well, that's a big part of it. Yeah, because by the time I was thinking about moving, in the 2008 or whatever, it's like all the gigs that I had been doing have all ended. Everything's dried up.
Right.
And there wasn't any place to play in much in town anymore, even. But as far as like all those the instrumental jazz kind of things that I was doing, that would, aside from Kenny, that would go out and go and do a week here and there and back and forth. Right. I mean, that stuff all seemed to it fell apart, and it just became like a hip hop town.
Right.
Everything was rap and hip hop.
Right.
And it's like, okay,
it's still
time to do something else.
Well, I hope I can get down there to hang out with you or catch one of your shows at some point, bro. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your generous talent and spirit with me and all of my listeners today. It's really awesome to catch up with you. Now, if people want to find you on the internet, I'm going to take a real leap of faith and say it might be vailjohnson.com.
Indeed.
Wow.
Man, you were good. You were reading my mind, man.
And we still got that telepathic Eric Marienthal band member thing going.
Yeah, right. Yep, indeed. Yeah, Vail Johnson on everything, whatever, it's
okay.
All the social media stuff. It's not hard to find something funny. You put my name in YouTube and something funny is going to come up for sure.
I love it.
Maybe me wearing hammer pants with a mullet, that kind of thing.
I remember those days.
You know it.
I remember us playing at Baked Potato Pasadena and you coming out of the dressing room in something that I don't even think Richard Simmons would dare to wear.
Well, back then I had the legs for it. I could pull it off.
You still got it, baby. Thanks so much, Vail, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, that's the end of season 3, folks, with Vail Johnson, the world's most incredible bass player. We'll catch y'all later, everybody, on the Planet Mullins podcast. Bye-bye.